The release of Europa Universalis 5 is behind us, and here's a handful of tips so you don't waste time on the very basic mistakes that, unfortunately, I also made. Now you don't have to. So welcome Imperialist, Lucas here. First of all, I've got a special Black Friday offer for you on ENEBA. This monitor is up for grabs. The results will be announced on December 4th. To have a chance to win this monitor, you need to click the link in the video description and the pinned comment and complete the listed actions to take part in the giveaway. The more actions you complete, the higher your chances of winning. Of course, besides that, the usual sales are going on right now. I'll start as usual with the settings. To make the game run better, even if your computer is a beast, Paradox has prepared a forum post that shows how to adjust all these parameters to improve performance. Link in the description. Map. Personally, I really like playing with this setting, which makes our vassals share the ruler's color. It looks something like this. By default, however, the game has these settings and then the map looks like this. It's all a matter of preference. There's also a third setting which makes your vassals have a slightly different shade similar to the ruler's color. Although I have no idea what orange has to do with that color. But hey, I'm a guy, colors aren't my specialty. By default, the game also shows dynamic names. Personally, I prefer to play with the shortened ones. Still on the map topic, you can switch to a flat map setting. That will make the game run much smoother. Personally, I have it set so that the map becomes flat when I zoom out. If you keep the 3D map on all the time, it really slows the game down significantly. In the game settings, it's also worth checking how the game behaves in two particular moments, when you declare war and when battles occur. For example, you might want time to slow down when a battle starts, and you hover over that specific engagement. In the interface options, it's a good idea to adjust the tooltip mode. By default, it's set to timer or action lock. Personally, I prefer action lock. It makes reading and navigating through all tooltips much faster. I can't believe I have to say this, but give the tutorial a chance. It's actually really well prepared and will explain the basics of the game. I also created my own guide based on it, which goes a bit deeper than the in-game tutorial, but still covers the fundamentals. Link, of course, in the description. I've already seen several creators make YouTube videos without playing the tutorial, and they just didn't understand the game. Then they're surprised that nothing really happens in this game, or that you just have to wait because they don't know how to core provinces. Paradox has also prepared many great systems, perfect for beginners, but not only for them. First of all, the hint system, which explains many of the more complex mechanics, sometimes even better than the tooltips do. Another mechanic is automation. That doesn't mean the game plays itself while you sit back and do nothing. This system works fine, but only for the current moment. It doesn't predict the future or adapt to your plans. As a beginner, it's worth using this system to break the game down piece by piece. This game can be overwhelming. Want to focus on war? Great, uncheck all the red tabs and set the rest to auto. Diplomacy, social actions and research are the blue tabs, while the yellowish ones represent the economy. So once again, automation is there to help you learn the game, not play it for you. And once you've mastered the basics, automation will still come in handy, especially when you create your first powerful empires like Great Yuan or the Golden Horde. So, here's my advice for more experienced players. In the later stages of the game, don't try to manage every single location. Don't be afraid of automation, it'll help you keep your sanity. The AI usually does a decent job anyway. Yes, you can also automate your armies by giving them specific orders, your navy too for that matter. The next system is the filter system. It's incredibly useful, especially for larger nations. Learn to use it as soon as possible. It'll save you tons of time. It also works great for finding buildings or resources. It's often linked to the mass construction system. It might not be worth using it right from the start, but you'll end up switching to it sooner or later anyway. By default, mass construction is usually tied to a specific market, but you can change or disable this option entirely. Filters and mass construction. These two systems are worth mastering early, as they'll make your gameplay much smoother later on. Maps. In this installment, they're even more important than they were in Europa Universalis 4. Many pieces of information in this game appear only in the form of a map. You'll only see certain data after selecting the right map mode. Without it, you'll get different information. It's a good idea to bookmark the maps you use most often and unpin the less useful ones you rarely check. All the maps most useful to me are the ones you're seeing right now. As you may or may not know, in this version you can educate your children. You can literally choose what type of education they'll receive. It's not worth cutting corners here. But be careful with the very expensive education options, they also increase your core expenses, which are usually among the biggest costs your country faces. Sometimes, when your heir grows up and you live long enough for them to have children of their own, it's worth adding them to your favorites to keep an eye on their education as well. Changing laws in your country. By default, you can simply do it in the Laws tab. By spending a certain amount of stability points, you can change any law at any time, but that's a trap. In reality, laws are meant to be changed through parliamentary action, and Parliament convenes once every 5 years. When you have at least 50% support in Parliament, you can perform one of its actions. One of these actions is changing a law without any additional cost. Since we are already talking about Parliament, the second very valuable parliamentary action is creating a casus belli on any province within your diplomatic range. The third option, which you might be tempted to ignore, allows you to raise taxes by 25%, but only for a year. Still, it can sometimes give you a massive boost of cash, speeding up your economic growth. Just make sure you have high support from your social estates beforehand, otherwise you risk a real rebellion. Pay attention to the in-game weather, as it affects a surprising number of mechanics. During winter in the mountains, your troops can literally get stuck and be unable to move between provinces until the snow melts in spring. Sometimes during winter, you can even cross certain sea tiles in the Baltic region because they freeze over. But be careful, if you don't move fast enough and the thaw begins, you lose your army. Winter also has a major impact on food production and your army's supplies, so plan your wars ahead of time. And what's worse, during harsh winters, construction of buildings can even come to a complete halt. Constructing a new building requires real resources, and those resources must be available on the market that the location you're building in belongs to. So it's worth making sure that construction materials are as cheap as possible, because they can ultimately reduce the building cost by up to 33%. The two main construction materials are masonry and lumber. You can of course increase the supply of these resources by constructing the appropriate buildings, or importing large amounts of construction materials from other markets, ideally when the prices are low. One of the biggest mistakes a player can make in this game is neglecting food, or rather ignoring it altogether. Every market has a certain food supply, and honestly, once you see a warning that you're starting to lose food, it's already too late. You need to make sure you always have at least a small food surplus. Even better, have a significant overproduction of food in provinces that are naturally suited for it. That is, those with goods providing 5 or 8 units of food, then stack as many natural bonuses to food production as possible, because these bonuses really add up nicely. In provinces by rivers, you can build irrigations, each increasing food production by 5%. And there are quite a few other buildings that grant food production bonuses. It's smart to cluster them in the same locations. You should also prioritize technologies that increase food output or reduce consumption. Because yes, food is actually consumed by your population. Peasants eat the least while the nobility devours the most. Be careful with privileges. Once granted, they're very hard to revoke early in the game. It comes with quite a hefty cost. Granting too many privileges at once can also cause some estates to become unhappy. Only the estate receiving the privilege benefits, the others grow jealous. Each privilege also reduces your legitimacy by 5 points. When it drops below 50%, trouble begins. Privileges also weaken crown power, and below 20%, things get grim. For example, your tax efficiency decreases, and tax efficiency basically means free money. Crown power also directly affects your real income from trade. When social estates are satisfied and have money, they'll start constructing useful buildings. They'll fund, for example, buildings for armed forces, tool workshops, and many other beneficial structures. Unhappy estates, on the other hand, will build less desirable buildings, ones that increase their own influence while giving you nothing in return. And yes, that means your crown power will decrease as a result. Don't ignore social values. In my first playthroughs, I completely overlooked them, and it turns out they're one of the most important mechanics in the entire game. It's worth planning ahead which values your country will need for your specific campaign. But to start off, here's a tip. Usually, centralization is better than decentralization, and innovation is better than traditionalism. As for the next two, I still don't have a strong opinion. Serfdom is better than free subjects because it scales very well with a traditional economy, giving you higher food and basic resource production. However, for smaller countries like the Netherlands, I do the exact opposite with these two values. If you plan to wage lots of wars, aggressive stance is your choice. If you prefer diplomacy, then go for the opposite approach. Quality pairs very well with offensive, while quantity isn't as dependent on defensive. For land-based countries like Poland, this particular stat is very important. For naval empires like Castile, go all in on navy. Typically, you'll push one of these directions by increasing either your land army size or your fleet capacity. As I mentioned in my beginner's guide, these values are mainly influenced by privileges, laws, and parliamentary actions. Ultimately, your advisors can also shift your country's values. For all maritime nations, the fleet is a crucial part of gameplay, unlike in most other Paradox games, where the navy is practically useless. Through the Maritime Presence action, your fleet helps expand control over coastal provinces. The navy is also extremely important for overseas operations, ensuring your armies are properly supplied with food, not to mention actions like piracy or coastal raiding, especially useful for nations such as Morocco. When playing colonial nations like Castile or Portugal, be careful with African colonization. It's a trap. Many African locations have tens of thousands of inhabitants, sometimes even more. In Europa Universalis 5, you colonize provinces, not locations. A colony is established when you own at least 5% of the province's population belonging to your accepted culture, minimum 3,000 people. This means that in places like Africa, where a single province might have over 100,000 people, you'll need to migrate far more settlers from your homeland than in the Americas, where population per location is often just 1,500 and sometimes even 1,000. So you'll end up colonizing all of America much faster than you'll secure 2 or 3 provinces in Africa. Don't ignore features like rivers or roads. They are the main factors affecting how control spreads through your provinces. And one more thing, just because a location has low control doesn't mean it's useless. Such locations still produce basic goods, which can still reach your market. Sure, you might not earn much from taxes there, but the better your market connectivity, the more goods flow into it. So what tips would you give to new players? What problem did you encounter and then solve that you'd like to share? Or what mechanic seems obvious to you now but gave you trouble before? Let me know in the comments, maybe others struggled with it too. Cavalry rules in this game. Seriously, don't be afraid to build armies composed almost entirely of cavalry. I don't yet have a clear opinion on whether light or heavy cavalry is better. I usually use a mix. But there's one condition for it to be effective. Don't fight larger armies. At most, fight ones that are equal in size. Cavalry deals massive casualties to the enemy, especially during the first 4 phases of battle. I can't show you proof because I accidentally deleted my old saves. And one more crucial note about armies: don't use cannons in battles at least until around 1600. Or more precisely, until you develop the artillery technology unlocked by this institution. Artillery deals damage only in the first phase of combat, and then it merely takes up slots and acts as a damage sponge. Its only purpose early on is to inflict as much damage as possible in that first phase. Only the artillery unlocked by that specific institution becomes strong enough to be worth using in battle. Of course, you can absolutely use artillery for sieges. It greatly speeds up the process. Also remember that different commander stats provide different bonuses. It's wise to assign a general with high administrative skills for sieges and one with strong military and diplomatic skills for battles. The same logic applies to naval commanders. And now, the biggest piece of advice for you: this game is played completely differently from Europa Universalis 4. In EU4, you could blob from the very start. Here, it's different, slower, but that doesn't mean it's boring. It means you have time to build your country's strength before maintaining large armies and starting true conquests. Personally, I wouldn't recommend starting with huge nations like Great Yuan because they can be overwhelming, or with countries like Japan, which have very complex and innovative mechanics. Give yourself time, start with mid-sized, more manageable European countries, learn the basics first, and then you can experiment with whatever you like. I've actually prepared a list of such countries for you, some located in Africa, others in Asia. Maybe it'll help you out. Let me know which one you chose.